Greetings, nerds. This is CNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing well, Sarah. Happy holidays. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. You know, we just had a pre-show dedicated to cats.
We did.
And dogs.
And dogs.
But mainly cats that cost $95 million. Those are expensive, and that's why I hate cats. But anyways.
How can you be my friend if you hate cats? I love cats. But not this travesty of a bomb that this movie was. But anywho.
I'm looking forward to your segue because we made a deal at the beginning of the show.
We did
and
make
now
a deal.
you get to sit in my seat for a change. And this is how it feels, Will.
Yes. So we were having a great pre-show talk discussion about cats, and the Mrs. Producer, Miss Shalini Sankaran, is with us tonight because I could not find how much this movie cost, and she was Johnny on the spot and got it. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
Yay, Mr. and Mrs. Oh my God. And
I'm kind of nervous.
Well, you shouldn't be nervous. I mean, Will, how long have you been podcasting with me?
With you, I think since January of 2017. So
yeah, and I mean, only 50% of the time he says anything embarrassing.
Exactly.
Only 50?
Only 50.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised it's
pretty good.
taken you this long to come onto the show and say, honey, we have to talk about your criticism.
Your nerd podcast, yes.
Yes, that's what she calls it, the nerd podcast. But yeah, we brought the big guns in tonight because we were talking Star Wars and the Mandalorian, and so we were and cats, definitely.
Why do you keep forgetting about the cats? We just had a good 10-minute conversation about cats. And you don't even want to talk about it on the show now.
I know, and I put it on the rundown too.
Yeah.
So
in other news, the Tenet trailer.
What did you think about the Tenet trailer?
I loved the Tenet trailer because it tells me absolutely nothing about the movie. I also found it to be very interesting that Robert Pattinson didn't even have a single line in it. Because they made it very clear he is not the main character, which I was shocked by based off of all the headlines going out there. This is John David Washington's movie, and I think there's something really cool about that aspect. The visuals, great, but it's Nolan, so and you know, I love these movies. I love Christopher Nolan. He is one of my favorite directors of all time, and I will go see every movie he makes, even if I end up hating it. But I'm going to see it in theaters because of his track record for me.
Yeah. I mean, I know he's getting back to his sci-fi thriller roots. I mean, you know, I was just thinking with Memento and Inception, as far as two films I just loved. And, you know, this movie has some time travel elements. And, I mean, I guess the trailer basically had some things discussing, it looks like John David Washington's character is trying to possibly prevent World War III, but at the same time you have the time travel elements too. I mean, I just love that visual when the ship was in the ocean and the wake was like going in reverse. Yep. That was just, I mean, it was just like,
subtle.
Very subtle, but I mean, and even like whenever they were showing some of the car chase scenes in the trailer too, as far as I watched it again this evening, and I was trying to pick it apart, and you know, one of the lines that stuck out to me was with you know, this is happening and it hasn't happened yet.
Yep.
So July 17, I'm still there.
So we already talked about cats and
well,
so
we talked a little. I know we did in the pre-show, but I mean, the reason why it's so this movie, I think everyone has. It's been probably the most lampooned thing on the internet this year, and it's just amazing that they were very, very strategic in their release date of dropping it the same weekend as Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. I mean, I know people will say no, it wasn't planned that way. bullshit. It totally was planned that way.
Yeah. And, Sarah, you made a point about people might go see it over Christmas. And I guess, if you get to the point where you're tired of being cooped up with various family members, you might be desperate enough to go see Cats.
Yeah, you might. I mean, last year I was desperate enough. I went to see Aquaman with my mom. Anything's possible.
Anything's possible. Hey, but Aquaman was a good film.
It was all right. Good film.
It's definitely. I'm sure it's better than Cats.
Yeah. I do see that point. But
but six
some stuff I heard about Cats.
Yeah, but 6.7
Probably gonna have
million.
a weird following.
Yeah, maybe it'll pick up. But I mean, it was projected to make 10 to 15 million this weekend. It only made 6.7. So, it's the headwinds are not favorable for Cats.
Yeah. So also, I guess we're going to break down our best or favorite 2019 shows. And we're running some polls this weekend.
Yeah. So I ran a poll this past week, and I tell you, of all the shows that were released in 2019 and that were aired in 2019, some of them have been series that have been around for a while. Others were new shows that dropped this year, like The Boys and Watchmen and all. So I tried to put together a pretty comprehensive list, and I realized that I think I probably still missed a couple. But the people who did respond to our poll, the Arrow fans just turned out. It actually ended up being the top show in our poll. So the Arrow fans, I know this is last season, they were like, hey, we're going to represent. Watchmen came in second. Witcher, Legends of Tomorrow, and Batwoman were tied at the next round of votes. And then there was just a glut of shows that were all got the same amount of votes, as far as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Umbrella Academy, Star Trek Discovery, Killjoys, Emergence, Jessica Jones, Cloak and Dagger, Black Lightning, and Doom Patrol. And last but not least, and also The Mandalorian.
Huh. Why do you think Discovery and, well...
So I don't know if it was open on all our platforms and stuff. I just really think the Arrow fans really just seized on it and voted a lot. I think it's just the love of the show, and maybe it was on the heels of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and so I think that's pretty much. It's not scientific by any measure, so but that's just.
Let's just make it scientific. How well did The Flash do?
The Flash got 0 votes, which is not surprising. Yeah.
So I don't mean to be scientific, Will, but let's be honest here. Yeah. I think people who follow our show and who are my fans voted for Arrow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I probably poisoned the well with how grumpy I've been about The Flash for season 5. So.
That's true. They could have also just followed along with you, considering how the Flash has been a bit mediocre lately. So
yeah.
But that is really interesting, because I could have sworn we had a bigger Flash following than we did an Arrow one.
Yeah.
But this decade has always surprised me with.
So what were your top shows for the year?
Genre or
Just genre.
Season 2 of Krypton, for sure. Mm-hmm. Like I think that show. It's so sad to think that nobody watched it, and what they were putting out kept me out the edge of my seat, and I was looking forward to watching it every week. Watchmen, but we all know this. We talked about it last week. Watchmen is a perfect season of television. In any genre, and it's not isolated. It should just be shown in film skill, and I think it's perfection. What else happened this year? Now that I really sit down and think about it, those two stand out to me the most.
Yeah, for me, the ones that stand out to me are Krypton, Watchmen, The Boys.
The Boys is interesting.
Yeah.
I really liked The Boys. That finale is awesome.
Yeah.
But when I think in retrospect, it always takes you or someone else to remind me that happened this year. And I don't know what that says.
Yeah, and it wasn't that. Yeah, and it was a late summer show. So yeah. But maybe that's. I mean, it was, and also it was Amazon, and it was one of those shows that it was a slow burn as far as like people really latching onto it. Because I know when we potted about it earlier, we got summer's feedback, but then I noticed towards the end of the year, a lot of people were like catching on to it, especially when they released their trailer for season 2. The other shows that I think for me that stood out for me this year, genre-wise, was Doom Patrol and Star Trek Discovery and last The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Star Trek Discovery and The Mandalorian, Will and I actually have a pact that neither is allowed to watch it the first time without the other one, or there will be unharmony in the household, to put it mildly. So,
I think that's a polite way of
put it politely. Yes.
Yeah.
So those definitely have been standout shows for the year. But I'm a science fiction nerd myself. But I'm looking forward to. Do they have a release date for the next season of Discovery yet?
I know. I don't think so. I know Picard is January. I want to say 22nd or 24th, and then Star Trek Discovery is later. I think I want to say it's maybe in the spring of around April, May timeframe, but I haven't seen the exact release date yet.
Yeah, one of the things I think they did that's really clever is release the shorts, the Star Trek shorts in between seasons. And each one is a standalone 15-minute thing. But there's so many nods to canon, and there's so many tie-ins that if you're a diehard Star Trek geek, and I know Will is the biggest Star Trek geek I know, those shorts kind of feed your soul during the hiatus, I would say.
It's kind of like what the MCU did, and I think it was right before Infinity War or the year before, after Civil War, where they released those Thor shorts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Those are great.
I love it. And I mean, that's what they do in this time and age. People like additional content for whatever they're currently fanboying or fangirling about, and especially during those hiatus periods, because now to get really good content, it's going to be a while before they can drop the next slate if you want, and you're going to have to take that wait. Now, I'm not saying pull an S-mail and wait an entire year and a half before you drop a season.
Yeah, really.
That's another story. But yeah, I like how they're doing additional content to help people with the hiatus, and they can because they have multiple platforms. And I'm actually going to watch Picard. Okay.
Oh, good.
Trailer. I put it on my list of things to look forward to, and I was very disappointed it wasn't dropping this fall.
Well, I figure that's the best news I've heard in my 2019 as far as fandom. So I feel like I have won the year by like getting you to watch a Star Trek show.
Hey, I tried Discovery, and this is not a scientific thing. However, I do think there is something to be said when siblings steal shows, and I cannot disassociate my older brother from Star Trek and my dislike, and there's a lot of childhood trauma associated with it.
Wow.
Will, so
I definitely think childhood memories plays a huge part, because for me, my dad, so you may know, I grew up in Malaysia, and we had 3 TV channels. We had TV1, TV2, and TV3. And TV2 would play reruns whenever they could get it from, US shows and UK shows. So my dad and I used to watch the original series together. Mm-hmm. So that is such a fond memory for me, and I kind of grew up around that. So that's what I associate with it. So that's interesting. There's definitely some childhood pull or push, I think.
There absolutely is, because there's a lot of times when somebody so Star Wars, I like stars, and we're going to get into the Rise of Skywalker and this new trilogy, but I don't know if I can genuinely say I grew up with Star Wars, because my dad is not the biggest fan, and by not the biggest fan, I mean he doesn't like Star Wars.
Wow. Yeah.
So he didn't really show us the films. He wasn't enthusiastic about it. We saw the films regardless. We all know the lines because it's so integrated to pop culture. And then of course the prequels come out, and I don't want to share my age, but yeah, that was targeted at my generation when they were released. But those didn't really suck me in. So this new trilogy is kind of what I'm viewing as my Star Wars. But it didn't. I'm not tied to the original trilogy because, and I blame my dad. As most things, you always blame the dad, never the mom.
Well, I don't know, but Star Wars is a thing I share with my dad too. And I'm definitely going to tell my age, because A New Hope was the very first movie I remember seeing as a kid in the theaters. And my dad took
Mine was the new Power Ranger movie.
And so, like I said, I grew up in Malaysia, and we had chicken wire fence between houses, and I would crawl under the chicken wire fence to go play Star Wars with the boy who lived next door. And we would make both our little sisters captives, make them sit on the grass, and we would battle over the captives. So that is my association with Star Wars.
Yeah.
Extremely geeky.
Oh no. I'm sorry. Did you not hear me say what I remember?
Yeah, I did.
And so let's just push this one step further. We have this thing in Alaska called Alaska Land, and it's basically a park. And there were a lot of Power Ranger fight scenes reenacted on that playground.
In Alaska.
So yeah, nostalgia is a big thing. Yeah. And but my dad likes Star Trek, but it's my association with my brother where there's something about it, and I don't know, but I am looking forward to Picard because I really like that trailer. And sometimes trailers will hook new fans, and sometimes you just see the same thing that you saw before. So I don't know.
Yeah, let's talk Mandalorian, because there is a point in the show this week that actually does have a Rise of Skywalker tie-in. Two things, I think, actually.
Yeah. And I cannot genuinely put Mandalorian on my list of best genre TV shows of this year. Mm-hmm. And it's because it's not finished. And I feel like it's currently, I like Mandalorian a lot. I'm not in love with the show yet. I still think that it's a bit, when I look back at all those episodes, only 3 stand out to me. Mm-hmm. And then the rest I've completely forgotten about. Or they feel like one-offs and they don't. And I know that they lead to places, because we're going to obviously talk about The Reckoning, which pulls in a lot of threads. And I like that. But I'm still waiting for a real big gut punch to occur where I'm like, wow, they really did that. And for a lot of people, it's this episode. I did not have that same feeling watching this episode.
Yeah, well, I think I was grumbling about everything just seeming like a one-off without really having a point. But then this last episode, when it ended, we were speechless.
Yeah. I mean, the gut punch for me definitely was how this episode ended with Baby Yoda and Krill ended up being murdered by the stormtroopers. I hear.
Or so we think. We don't know.
Well, we don't know.
Well,
it could have been Joy.
It Krill is dead, and then
but a good point. It could be droid that was reprogrammed by Krill that did them in. But the thing that as far as the season itself, I kind of there was a lot of walking as some people that we talked about. Some of those episodes that were one-offs, but I think I hear your point, Sarah, that that you're giving it incomplete until we see the finale.
Mm-hmm.
But the things that the Reckoning to me definitely was one of those episodes. I mean, it's one. All of them stand out. I do remember them all, but the two that were directed by Deborah Choi, this one and the earlier one where he turns on
Episode number 3.
Number 3, where he turns on the guild and has the showdown with Geek and were real gut punch, really transitions as far as like showing the evolution of this character who is still as from the very beginning the man with no name, High Plains drifter, Clint Eastwood spaghetti western, Seven Samurai, which has been that through line throughout. So even though the one-offs were, like, where are we going with this? I definitely appreciate them because they did do a solid job of setting up, except for maybe the episode with the Tatooine, but did a solid job of setting up all the elements where everyone comes back together here in the Reckoning.
Right.
And so when the episode ended, we were all in the house like, wow, okay.
Yeah, I do feel the penultimate episode there pulled together a lot of the threads that I was like, where are they going with this? Like the blue shrimp planet thing, like where were they going with that?
Yeah, but having with
Kara, yeah.
Okay. I was like, what blue shrimp planet?
Like blue shrimp planet. But that's where they met Kara and realized
my mind went straight to Watchmen with blue shrimp. I was like,
no Dr. Manhattan here. No, definitely no Dr. Manhattan.
So Deborah Choi, and I'm glad you brought this up, Will, because I think it's very interesting, all of the praise that she's getting. And I'm not trying to cut the credit or anything, give her not credit. But I think in episode 3, she really left her mark because of her directing style. In this episode, The Reckoning, I don't think it was the direction that she took that made this a good episode, and specifically a good penultimate episode, but it was the writing and how it did make everything that we've seen in those episodes building up to it relevant, and then leading us to a cliffhanger, knowing that there's going to be a delay before we can get the real resolution of what's going to happen. And I'm one of the people who is like, this is Disney, so there's a good chance Quill is not dead, but it makes it appear that way. And if he did die, I kind of do want it to be because of the droid, because there was so much emphasis, or has been a lot of emphasis, on why Mando does not like droids.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me to really get closure, I need something to be explained about that, because I swear it's mentioned at least once an episode.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I hear your point about her, but it's Jon Favreau wrote this episode, and he's a very unappreciated screenwriter. I mean, and he's also he's also behind this show. And the thing that I think Favreau has done well with also with Dave Filoni as far as the other showrunner is, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, when we talk Rise of Skywalker. I mean, there's some unpredictable elements to this, because whenever I first saw this show, I had a completely different take on what this show was going to be about. And, introducing Baby Yoda and having them basically, I liken it almost to like Knight Rider from the 80s or something like that, where it's like the adventure of the week, and and Mando and Baby Yoda going off on these various adventures with this through line of trying to run. And even a geek even said, during an episode, you can't run anymore. We'll find you. And I think that's what was one of the geniuses about this, especially how predictable in some ways Star Wars has gotten.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, it was refreshing because I think it is what Star Wars could have been if you took more chances and sort of went deeper into backstory and psyche without falling into as many of the tropes.
Yeah, because for me, it's funny with the new Star Wars products that are out there right now, and I know as part of it's just because it is television and you see these characters every week and you get a chance to get more emotionally attached to them than you say in a feature film. But I I mentioned this before with whenever on our show, I feel more connection with Mando and Baby Yoda than I do with the new trilogy.
Interesting.
It's pretty impressive for a CGI puppet character and a character you can't see his face, right?
Yeah. Well, Baby Yoda's practical effect, but even so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So,
I mean, I'm tied to Yoda. I'm tied to Baby Yoda because he's freaking adorable and he's a child, and I like how they refer to him as the child.
The child.
And in the very first episode, he's also known to be 50 years old. And I know that they kind of have a line about, well, species age at different rates and everything. But I think that's still very interesting that they chose to, that's almost a paradox that built into that character to even add to the mystery of the species and who he is. But it also allows immediate empathy to look at that as a child, because you want to protect it automatically. So I'm very tied to that. Mando, he's the bodyguard and he's the lead character, but I still view him as somebody who I think arguably, unless they want to make another season following this character around, you could have the ultimate sacrifice of Mando at the end of the season in protection of that kid. But oh no, we're following tropes now. But I can totally see that happening because I'm sure that other everyone always equates it to Westerns, but then you also have samurais, and it's the same thing where you have the protector and then the kid, and at the end of it, the protector always dies.
Yeah. True.
Because that was the mission.
True. I mean, if thinking on the theme of protection and stuff, the child also is very protective of Mando because when you think about I love that scene where they were doing where he and Cara were doing the arm wrestling, and and baby and the child Sith held her, choke holder,
because something that has the ability to heal and to give life back can also take it. And that's the whole dark and light side clashing. And somebody who doesn't know the full extent or doesn't know how to use that power, that's the kind of fight within materializing. And I think that was really cool to see, especially because the simple and the cliche thing would have been he helps Mando win the arm wrestling contest. But he's a creeper, so he's going to try to force strangle her.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's figuring out who to trust and who's a protective figure and who's an enemy. He's always watching. Baby Yoda's always watching from his little car seat or portable little buggy. And
he's a carnivore.
That to me is very interesting also, just how many scenes involve Baby Yoda just watching blinkingly, and you're like, what is this child taking in, right? Does that shape philosophy, and how do you discern a protector and someone worthy of healing?
Or mimicking. Because when you watch Mando's an assassin. He's out there and he's not afraid to kill people or whoever is threatening him or the child or any of his friends. So for all we know, the child has observed that and was thinking, oh, she's a threat. So let me just remove her because that's what my quote unquote dad would do.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes it even more childlike and more appealing to view this thing through that lens as a viewer.
It's being shaped through all these experiences and this father figure.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, begs the question. Yes, we know that there's a connection, and it's kind of cool to think of Mando as the child's father. But if he's going to remain a Mandalorian, how long can he be the kid's father figure before maybe he uses his powers, he turns to the dark side? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about this show, and especially, quite frankly, what's happening whenever the child does use his powers is these folks really aren't very. The Force is not that big a deal in their part of the galaxy. I mean, this happens 5 years after Return of the Jedi. And so, of course, in the primary episodes, it's all about the Force and the Jedi and da-da-da-da-da. Even though we have, the remnants of the Empire, and I know that, I mean, clearly some of the Moff who we see at the very end of the show definitely realizes what he has here and why he wants the child. But, rank and file people in the galaxy like the Mando and others are kind of like, some don't fully recognize what's going on here.
Which makes sense, and I'm glad you brought this up, because that's a reminder that for people who are not fans of this series and people who actually live in this universe, it is rare to be Force sensitive. We are so inundated with stories of Skywalkers, Sith, and Jedi. We feel like everyone is Force sensitive at this point because it just feels so common and relevant. But this show is proving, whoa, we just built a whole universe, and this is actually a very rare trait. So it's not as common as we are led to believe in the cinematic universe.
Right. Yeah. And that's the whole point of the whole series, which is why the child is so sought after. That Force sensitive. Yeah. Unless.
Yeah. I mean,
that species, because Force sensitive for viewers, I don't think would be that big of a mystery or really be as intriguing, but it's also nobody knows what the species is too. And and I get the impression it's one of the last of its kind. It ages differently. So there's I think there's also this presence of astonishment because of the species as well.
Yeah, but you could have all that and not have the Force, and it would not be sought after, in my opinion.
True.
Good point. Fair point. But
unless
that's what
it could be something cooler.
Yeah, and that was cool. One. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and that was one of the tie-ins I thought to Rise, and also obviously the healing element too. We saw it earlier in this season, and then of course, again when the child helps Geek with with the injuries he sustained from the pterodactyl thing.
All right, Will, we can talk about Rise of Skywalker.
No. I mean, but it's just very important. I mean, those are just very elements that, whenever we first talked about this show, I was wondering how they were going to tie it in to the events of the second trilogy or the third trilogy. And so that's one way. And then the other way one thing I had talked about was the whole First Order elements, and hopefully we'll see some of the birth of the First Order. And I think that the Moff that we saw at the very end of the show with when he came down with his modified TIE fighter is also, again, we're just having the remnants of the Empire, and again seeing that character and all his shock troops and everything again, I think leads into, fills in those intervening years as far as this. Hopefully this show will, as I said, when we talked about the pilot, hopefully that'll tie into some of the things that we see in the future trilogies, so that it does tie back into the larger universe of Star Wars.
Right. So let's get into this. What is everyone's thoughts on Rise of Skywalker?
Sorry, you go first.
Yeah. Why? Why me? I feel very vulnerable going first.
Well, I can go first. I thought it was, visually beautiful, and it ticked all the fandom boxes.
Okay.
But yeah, it played it very, very safe and almost too safe. And I was a little disappointed because it was, and I could get into this later a little bit, but I thought, if you were there for the fan service, you got the fan service. If you were there for sort of a deeper exploration of the storylines that had been developing in The Last Jedi, for example, then you'd be sorely disappointed because some of those were just brutally cut off.
Yeah,
so,
like Bruce.
Yeah. So it was meh. It was there, tick the boxes, But yeah, we can get into that a little bit more. I have some thoughts.
Which movie checked the boxes more? This one or A Force Awakens?
I think this one.
Okay. Interesting. Because I had a very similar review of Force Awakens where at one point I referred to it as color by numbers.
Yep.
And so this one I can totally see and understand why people are calling it. And I do think it was very safe. I just like the movie.
I didn't dislike it. I just was, yeah.
Right. It was
nothing in there was I wouldn't say nothing was surprising, but yeah.
Yeah.
There were some pleasant surprises. So when my initial reaction after I saw the film, even during the film, especially when it had the climactic battle at the end, I actually leaned over to our daughter and said, "It's Return of the Jedi." So I did, because you had the throne, you had a new throne room,
yeah.
And you had all this kind of stuff. So yes, it did have those elements. But as I had time to think about it and get over the visceral gut reaction, it's not my favorite Star Wars film, but it's no Phantom Menace either. And
I think that's fair. Yeah.
So
it's no Attack of the Clones.
yeah. That's down to my even though that one ages better, despite the Padme and Anakin love dating scenes and whatnot. But there are parts of Attack of the Clones that age better. But I digress. But I think it was a very middle of the road film for me as far as what I do my rankings of Star Wars, and it definitely had this, as you both said, fan service, check boxes, safe outcomes. But overall, I liked it, and there were some pleasant surprises in the film, and it was very clear to the point where Luke Skywalker put it right on the nose. It's like with JJ reaching out to the fans with the dialogue line, I made a mistake with Luke in the film whenever they went back to the world that he exiled on.
See,
right.
I feel like, so I read some reactions on social media that said if you like The Last Jedi, you will not like The Rise of Skywalker.
Not true.
And vice versa. And I think I kind of fall into that camp because there were a lot of very interesting concepts that started to be developed from The Last Jedi that had to do with individualism versus the collective and fate and destiny versus choice and free will that I was really enjoying. So at the end of the day, the Rise of Skywalker came down to this is your bloodline, this is your destiny, and you are the ones with the power. It was almost like a monarchy or, an authoritarian system, right? Authoritarianism can be benign or evil. And everybody else are just actors in this, serving this bloodline. Whereas
Right.
I feel that in The Last Jedi, with some of the exploration of Finn and introduction of, minor character that they could have done a lot more with Maz Kanata, for example, it was really starting to explore free will and individualism and choice. So Luke made the choice to walk away, for example. And, Rey was supposedly a scavenger from nowhere. So, and Finn, I think Will and I talked about this. Finn, there's a theory that he might be force sensitive, right?
Oh, he is.
He is. So I liked that it was, no, it's not all fated and destiny if you're of a certain bloodline. There was a more of a democratization of the Force and the Jedi Order that I would have liked to see more of.
Right. It's still Finn's. I had such high hope for Finn going into Force Awakens, and even in Force Awakens, he did a very good job, and it was just downhill from there. Where I don't know why JJ wanted to suddenly make him Force sensitive. The only thing that I can tie it back to is at the beginning of A Force Awakens, there is a moment during that opening attack scene where Kylo looks over at Finn. Mm-hmm. And there's a shared moment, and Kylo senses the Force in others. We all know this. Mm-hmm. And he's often drawn to those. And so in this movie, when it's kind of alluded to that Finn is Force sensitive, that I immediately fell back to that moment. I was like, okay, it's a stretch, but I guess this is what they've been planning for the whole time. But I also don't think you needed to do that. There's no Last Jedi definitely didn't make that clear that he was Force sensitive. It also just made it go back to what we were talking about with the Mandalorian, where it's like people who are Force sensitive, they all end up meeting each other. There's always interrelating or something tied together. There's a connection, and I think it actually detracted from his character for me, because I really liked him having been taken from his family, put into that situation, and then choosing to walk away from it. I think that's a cooler arc and something they could have done more with than feeling the need to add on, he's also Force sensitive in this last movie.
Yeah, I mean, that was JJ's way of I think, confirming basically all the fan theories that were out there that he was Force sensitive. But and to Shali's point about democratizing the Jedi, I mean, that was something that one of the things I did like about Rian Johnson's take on the story, and and with Rey, because it was going in that direction. I mean, that was clear that was where they were going.
Yep.
And obviously JJ decided not to go that route, but it would have made for a better story, and it would have explained for other characters like Finn, who if the circumstances had been different, could have easily have been part of the Jedi Order. So especially in the New Republic, because I mean, obviously we know from The Last Jedi, Luke was in the process of training a new order, and Ben was seduced to the dark side, and basically had the same character arc as Anakin. So I think those are elements.
Luke did try to kill Ben.
Yeah, he did. True.
He did.
There was that too.
There is that.
Yeah, that
little thing. Yeah.
That little thing. I think it's what you forgot to mention was the self-defense that was happening when he burned it all to the ground.
Yeah. I forgot that moment. Fair point.
So which brings us to Palpatine. I mean, that's really what you're getting at, where this whole idea that Rey is suddenly of that lineage, and a lot of people who watched The Force Awakens, we all called it because we knew it after that movie, and which really part of the reason why people like Last Jedi is because there was that shift in that narrative, which caught everyone by surprise. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. That's so much more interesting than what we thought it would be. And then they swerved back to
right back to the tropes and the fan service. Yep.
And then on top of it, you also right off the bat get introduced with this notion that Palpatine has been pulling the strings the whole time. Mm-hmm. He created Snoke. He's been manipulating Ben since the beginning. So it's just, but I'm not, again, we already prefaced this. I'm not tied to the original trilogy. And I've been listening to a lot of reviews today, and everyone always talks about the similarities with Return of the Jedi. I don't really remember Return of the Jedi. So when I was watching this movie, I was like, oh, okay, cool. And this is happening. All right. I didn't realize that it was copying that movie to the extent that diehard fans are referring to it. So for me, it was like, I've never seen it before. So.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, and clearly we've all talked about, fans have talked about how the new trilogy does reference back to the original thing. And so, of course, all of us as fans, no matter when you come into the Star Wars universe, are going to see things in it that you recognize. So newer fans would see the Kylo and the Anakin arc, especially in the prequels, are clearer together. Mm-hmm. And so for older fans, we had the original trilogy, so we know how the story ends, and then the prequels show us how Anakin gets to become Darth Vader and stuff. So I guess it's not I don't know if it's necessarily a good or bad thing, but I do think that by JJ being safe, JJ really, I mean, he's a phenomenal director. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But I really wish he had just been brave as a filmmaker and had just picked up some of the themes of Ryan from Last Jedi and retcon where you need to, but there were a lot of good elements there that they could have, like, as you guys have just talked about, going with Rey and not had her be a Palpatine.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was going to say, and the story, I think, fans would have been just fine with that.
I don't know. Yeah, well, maybe.
Well,
one thing, speaking of storylines that I would have liked to see picked up as the Kelly Marie Tran storyline. I mean, I thought it was a shame how her character got reduced to such a minor role after the Last Jedi.
Oh God, yeah. Pippin was like, Pippin took all her lines.
Hatred. Yeah.
I was like, hey, the Hobbit's taking her lines. What's going on here?
Which everyone thought he was cast as a Knight of Ren, which are another characters who all I've been hearing from people is, oh, I can't wait until they explore the Knights of Ren. They didn't do anything this movie. Okay. They allowed cool action scenes to occur, but they were just henchmen. Faceless henchmen. Yeah.
They were just Kylo's. Yeah, they were his fancy stormtroopers. Totally.
And but see, I do have to say, the action sequences I loved all the Jedi fights.
Yeah. Oh, they were amazing. That was they were amazing
fighting.
Yeah. That whole wreckage of the Death Star and the stormy waters, that was just visually stunning. It was just beautifully done. Yes. That I could have.
It was also relevant to what was actually happening with the characters. It wasn't action for action's sake. Mm-hmm. Every time they were going at it, it was them also dealing with their inner issues and issues that they've been dealing with, and this is one of why. And I'm a Reylo shipper. We all know this.
No, really?
Yeah. I'm only invested in this for one reason, and that's because of these two. But part of the reason is I think overall, out of everything they built on from Force Awakens, this connection and this dichotomy between these two characters has been one of the most consistent through lines of the trilogy. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think there was also an intention they made where I felt like they took what happened in The Last Jedi and they just put it on steroids in this movie. Because now all of a sudden they're exchanging objects. They're actually having a fight sequence occur between these two.
Right? Yeah.
Right. And I love that because it was a natural evolution to what we got in The Last Jedi, which I thought was really interesting and different, and allowed for a lot of cool action sequences to occur. So I loved all of that.
Yeah, I'm a Finn fan. I thought Finn got shortchanged.
Well, speaking of which, so what did everyone think he was going to tell Rey? Since we're talking shipping,
technically you're supposed to say "I love you, Rey," but in retrospective, it was he's Force sensitive, or no, she's a Palpatine, because he knew that too. Sorry.
How did he know?
Thank you. They never explained that, but he knew.
There's a lot of stuff they never explained. How did he know?
So he also said Leia knew too, which tells me if you're Force sensitive, you can identify any Palpatine in existence.
I'll tell you where it was in the scene in the desert where she destroys the cruiser.
Because he was gonna tell her. He was gonna tell her something before that.
Before that, right. But I mean, maybe that's true. I'm getting the timeline mixed up, but I think. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I love you. It would have been too on the nose because she would have been like, I know, and it would have just been like, no. I don't think it was that. I think it was probably one of the two theories. Either he was Force sensitive, and which leads to him basically maybe he didn't know that she was maybe going to use the words of Palpatine.
Oh, I forgot to throw out one more theory. There's also the theory he was going to tell her that he's gay and really loves Poe.
Yeah, I know there was that fandom out there. I don't think that was where they're going to go.
I think it would be more believable if Poe was gay and really loves Finn, and Finn spends the last 3 movies being love struck by Rey. So I don't know.
Yeah. See, and maybe I think that I actually love John Boyega. I love John Boyega. And because the more I think about this movie in particular, the more problems I have with Finn as a character. And I have a lot of problems with Poe as a character, even though I do like their opening sequence between Chewie, Poe, and Finn, and all of their rapport. I really like the choice that JJ made, where I was pissed off during The Last Jedi because Poe and Finn were separated through most of the movie, and this movie it was Poe and Finn, and I was like, thank God, because those two, I want to see a buddy cop movie with those two actors. They're great.
Yeah, they do play well off each other, and there's definitely that romance chemistry there. But I was thinking about that point as far as people separated, the complaints about the characters being separated, and that was, and again, I know keep going back to this, and I'm trying not to, but that was what happened in Empire Strikes Back, because they all were separated. Luke was off training on Dagobah, Han and Leia, were trying to escape the Star Destroyer, ended up on Bespin. So, I mean... Again,
another parallel, by the way. I'm just going to interrupt. Rey was training. And
Yeah. So...
It was just like not even a subtle parallel. They just...
Yeah, true. Yeah,
she was training with Master Leia.
Yeah.
I don't know why you guys got so quiet by that. I thought that was cool.
I thought it was. I mean, it was a cool retcon. I mean, they had to explain how she figured out how to do all the stuff she did in Last Jedi. So I think where he took the best elements of Last Jedi and either used it to their advantage for this story, or depending on your point, again, a certain point of view, turn it to his detriment.
No, I keep coming back to this kind of bloodline and birthright versus the democratization, right? So when Rey first picks up a lightsaber, she automatically knows what to do. Now, in retrospect, you could say that's because she's a Palpatine, but I kind of like that she was a scavenger, and I kind of like that Finn could be force sensitive. And you may have people out there who are force sensitive and are able to learn the ways of the Jedi without having the bloodline. And I wanted to see more of that.
So I rewatched my favorite scenes of both The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi earlier today. And I watched that fight sequence because everyone refers to it and always questions why was a scavenger able to pick up the lightsaber and defeat Kylo. And I noticed in rewatching it, she doesn't immediately know what to do with it. Mm-hmm. It actually takes until later on in the fight when she's about to get pushed off the cliff and he tells her, you have the Force, where she, in her mind, she didn't realize that. And now she's able, and then she taps into it, and that's how she's able to overcome Kylo is because not only it's because she actually realizes he tells her what she has and she uses that to her advantages and becomes this Jedi goddess type character, I guess. But it's not an automatic thing, and I don't know. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. I did my research, Will.
You did.
But I do agree that Palpatine being in this movie did not have a problem with it. I do think it took away from Rey and this whole arc that they were building, that she is a nobody, to make her part of that bloodline when we didn't need that. We had already accepted the other theory about her as the truth. And so I didn't need that. But they did what they did, and then they added some stuff we didn't need, and then they delivered on the very one thing I did need, which was the Reylo kiss.
I thought of you. I laughed out loud. I was like, Sarah Belmont's probably, when she sees this, she's going to be smiling.
I was so happy, and then I was so sad.
They give it to you, and just when they take it away.
So the other scene I want to bring up and is Han and Ben.
Oh yeah.
Because definitely. You brought up the line before, Will, about I love you, I know, and in that scene they use it, which I thought was so clever because I wasn't expecting it. I don't think anyone expected Han Solo to show up. Movie.
My jaw, that was one of the few moments in that film where my jaw fell on the floor. I was truly, honest to God, surprised when that happened.
Han showed up.
Yeah. I was. I did. Yeah. I mean, I know it was. I mean, basically, it was Ben's memory of his father, and basically, because Rey just had rescued him, he had his come to Damascus moment where he sees the errors of the Sith, but and what better way to do that than to bring Han, and that moment where they committed patricide there on the Starkiller base. Mm-hmm. So I mean it was I mean I should have seen it coming, but I didn't, and I loved it.
Oh yeah. I was actually expecting more retcon footage of Leia being inserted, which I have to be honest, I had a problem with all of her footage. I was so annoyed.
Why? Why did you have a problem?
Because it felt as if you could tell with the writing that she was not in the same scene as everyone else. You knew it was in her place, and it was so awkwardly handled, and I felt like the characters kept saying things that she would then say, and so it felt very repetitious, and as if you could shoot those same scenes without her and it would be fine.
Yeah. I mean, would you have been okay if they had recast her?
No, and
No.
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm gonna go back to the Last Jedi argument where Leia and the whole space thing, Mary Poppins thing, should not have been.
that was terrible. Yeah.
Okay. They could have just
there are
left
a lot of Mary Poppins coming back from the dead things that shouldn't happen. Palpatine shouldn't have happened.
Sure.
That would invalidate the whole thing to begin with, and the whole Snoke clone thing I did not like that. I thought that was ridiculous. I never liked Snoke anyway.
I like his death scene the most.
Yeah. You like the most?
I like that throne scene where they kill Snoke. Like that's the best scene.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I as far as Leia, I mean, I get it. I mean, I was going into this film trying to figure out how it would come across. It didn't take me out of it because really the first 20 minutes of the film was all exposition anyway. So honestly, it was the trailer. You know, the first 20 minutes was basically like, oh, I saw this in the trailer. Oh, I saw this in the trailer. They really just really kept it close to the vest as far as the trailers with this film. And so her presence, I was like, okay, it didn't take me out of it. I didn't, but I did. But I think you're right. They probably could have done those very scenes without her character.
I don't know. I thought the passing of the baton of leadership was nicely done.
And
I thought that was very nicely done.
Yeah.
I think that was done. I liked how they tried to bring it. Like we had the one scene of young Luke and young Leia, and they were training, and they kind of tied it into the fact that why she never fully embraced becoming a Jedi is because she knew at the end of her journey it would lead ultimately to the death of her son, which in a way it did, regardless if she became one or not. So, but I like those. It was just some of the other instances where they're trying to do exposition, and you don't need her. They just felt like adding her for some reason. So.
Yeah. And but it was also needed to have those scenes though, because it, you know, when Chewbacca, you know, found out that they had lost Leia, it was, you know, and as I was watching the film, I'm like, man, all the, you know, all the Star Wars that I grew up with, it's like, man, they're just killing everybody off. And well, obviously with Leia, they had to write in Carrie's untimely death, but it was a very humanizing moment in that film, with the way Chewie reacted, because he's lost everyone at that point. I mean, you know, Luke's gone, Han's gone, Leia's gone. I mean, Lando's back, but it was a very, you know, it hit the right emotional beats in the film for that, to show that there are mistakes that are going on here larger than just, you know, what we're dealing with.
I also think the showing of Leia's mentorship of Rey was very important, and how much she supported her, knowing that Rey was Palpatine and knowing what her own son had become, and probably knowing that she was sending Rey into this battle, right? I thought that was really touching.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. It almost was as if how Luke and Leia embraced Rey was their redemption for what happened to Ben.
Totally.
Yes. They also...
Yes, that's what I was trying to say, yes.
Yep.
You put it much more elegantly. You've had more experience with this.
Oh no, I'm glad you brought it up because that did work well, and that's part of the reason why at the end of the movie she takes the name Skywalker. She doesn't take the name Solo, like in the fan fiction I wrote. She would have taken that name, but she took the name Skywalker.
Right, and yeah.
Yeah, and she chose to be a Skywalker. That's something else to give a credit to is that they added this weird lineage with her and Palpatine, but then they also at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what blood you have. If you're going to choose to become a Skywalker, then you can do it. Mm-hmm. So
that in a way refutes my whole, that comes back to is it your destiny or is it your choice? Mm-hmm. Right. And she had a certain destiny that Palpatine wanted for her, but in the end, she made, it was her free will and her choice.
Yeah, right. But you could have both of those tracks parallel. I mean, I don't think they're not exclusive with each other. I mean, I think you can still have a choice, but there is that element of destiny and bloodline and all that was a through line through this
and
saga.
They allude to that, right? They allude to that anger and the hatred and.
Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning with Anakin, I mean, that's been a through line that. Yeah, I mean, they're even with the cursed midichlorians.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's what makes for a good hero or a good villain is that complexity.
Yeah.
I still think, I mean, now that I'm thinking more about the Skywalker line, that's fitting better with me. I still think that when she looked up, she should have seen Ben's Force Ghost and not Luke and Leia. I felt like that was fan service right there.
I felt that Luke and Leia were, throughout her journey, were her mentors, her protectors, her guides, her teachers, and almost like her substitute parents. Mm. They're the ones who gave her the strength to do what needed to be done.
So we're just pushing forward the incest of Star Wars. Really, because that's immediately what I was thinking about. I'm like, oh yeah, my substitute parents who just so happen to be twins and kissed in the first movie. Yeah.
But they were the mentors, right? They knew what Ben had become and they knew what needed to be done to defeat Palpatine.
I completely agree. And I understand why they chose it. And I think maybe this is why this movie, there's such a divide, or not even a divide, but there's a true debate happening with it, is because I feel like, and maybe you can argue this for the full saga or full trilogy, that there were two types of fans that they were trying to please the entire time. They were trying to please the fans who grew up with the original trilogy and who wanted to see those characters come back in little ways and finish those stories, while at the same time introducing other characters and telling their stories and trying to tie it all together. And so there was a lot of balancing happening between how do I finish this new trilogy, end the entire saga, and make everyone happy. And so I think that's why we get into these discussions of at the end, when she looked up, should it have been Luke and Leia like it was in the movie, or should it have been Ben? Because I think Ben, that relationship was stronger in this trilogy. And really that what do they call it? They call it a dyad?
A dyad.
Dyad. In the Force. And I mean, the only reason why she's able to do that is because he gave her his life force. And so they are one now. And that is the balance in the Force. This should have been called The Rise of Ben Skywalker.
Well, yeah, again, yeah. But to your point, that's the intersection of the old hats and the new guard.
Yeah.
And Ben Solo's is that focal point, and Rey, as well. I mean, those two characters, and so I could see I see your point in that Ben's ghost could have easily have been on Tatooine when she saw it, but at the same time, it was very fitting because Luke and Leia did basically become her surrogate parents whenever she thought she was a nobody and a nothing and a scavenger.
Yeah.
And so I think giving his life force to her was that Force Ghost moment. And then we had the close out with Luke and Leia. And that's how you complete this story.
Yeah. And on the planet where it all began.
Exactly.
Right. Beautiful ending to tie it back to closing the chapter on Tatooine.
Mm-hmm.
Or closing the story back on Tatooine.
Hopefully. I mean, we are talking about Disney Studios. They always want more money. So who knows if this story's really close. They also like to taunt us and say, oh, this is the last of it. We swear. Just wait another 20 years and we're going to drop 3 more.
Yeah, we'll drop 3 more with the new lineage and stuff. But one other point that before we close out that I also like for Rey and Luke's sort of story and her training was when she went back and she crashed the TIE fighter on his exile planet. I think it's Echo Chol, and he basically told her you have everything you need, and he saw in the X-wing, he raised it out of the ocean. That to me was another way. I know it was a huge fan service, but it was completing an arc from Empire Strikes Back where he wasn't able to lift that out of the Dagobah swamp. So I thought that was another. It was a fan service moment, but it was also a solid way of using Rey's despair to help her realize you got this, kid, and then led the Brit and was able to, then she had the, thought of using those breadcrumbs to lead the people to the nowhere space where the Sith was headquartered.
Yeah, and it also it gives it more of a reason why in Last Jedi he just didn't use that to go and save the day, and instead just sacrificed himself from that island.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was I agree. It was definitely a good way to make that connection back to him.
Which makes me wonder why people are having. I know people like after Last Jedi, the fandom split and everyone got really upset and either hate it or love it. But for me, and as we finish talking about Rise of Skywalker, there's tie-ins to both movies. And I don't think if you liked The Last Jedi, you're going to automatically hate this movie or vice versa. I think there are parts, just like there were parts of Last Jedi that people hated and then parts that you really do like. I think something about this trilogy is there is none of these 3 films I think I can honestly say don't have things that I don't like about them, because they all feature, and some of them feature plot points that I really despise a lot more heavily than others. But still, I think really what JJ set out to do with this movie is try to bring as much as what we did like from both movies forward, and things that did not work, just cast them aside. And I mean, I love Kelly Marie Tran, but her character didn't work. And I think that's why they used her the way she did in this movie rather than trying to move forward with it. But that's just my 2 cents.
Fair point. Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I think we've pretty much covered all the major points from this film. Shalini?
I just thought if you're paying attention, it was cute the way there was so much fan service. There was a glimpse of pretty much everything from Ewoks to Porgs. The only thing you didn't see a glimpse of was a gun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. True.
Speaking of things that didn't work. But no, I think that, as we said in the beginning, this was a safe movie. It hit all the points it needed to hit. And overall, it was a satisfying wrap up.
Yeah.
There's certainly things that I thought I would have done differently, but there was a tall order to deliver on all the expectations someone was saying that this whole arc, these 9 movies, have really been the mythology of our time. So that's a tall order to deliver on a finale for something like that. And I think it was satisfying enough that it achieved what it needed to do.
Right.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for guest hosting the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was great to get your insights. I'm always hearing about how much your family are a bunch of geeks, and I always think it's interesting that only Will is allowed to be on the podcast.
I don't know. I don't think it's so much that he's allowed. It's just that it's past my bedtime usually.
Well, he does that strategically, right?
She still has many of the seasons of the Arrowverse to get caught up on.
Yeah, I could not hold my own with the Arrowverse. It would not be good. But thank you for having me on.
Yeah, do you want to tell our listeners where they can find you?
At Dr. Shalini on Twitter. That's probably the best way.
And Will, where can our listeners find you?
You can always find me and send me your thoughts where you disagree on us at Will and Polk, WILLMPOLK.
And you can follow me on Twitter at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at SNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, but most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Spotify. Good night, geek out.